My number two is a movie called The Long Hot Summer from 1958, starring Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, Orson Welles, Angela Lansbury, directed by Martin Ritt. Quick logline: accused barn burner and con man Ben Quick arrives in a small Mississippi town and quickly ingratiates himself with its richest family, the Warners. This movie's on my list because I watched Ethan Hawke's amazing documentary on Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward called The Last Movie Stars. It's like I think it's a 6-part documentary on HBO Max. So I highly recommend that.
Okay.
About just their life and their art and their marriage and their relationship and just movie business. And the way he put it together was he basically found, so Paul Newman was planning to probably make something like this on his own. So he had like recordings and tapes and of his friends and people calling in, everybody from, directors to other movie stars, what have you, to kind of, and then piece this whole thing together. But at some point he got cold feet or changed his mind. So he burned all those tape recordings.
Whoa.
But he had the written transcripts of all these interviews that he'd done, including with his ex-wife and family members and everybody. So Paul Newman's daughter, I think, reached out to Ethan Hawke to kind of put this together. So Ethan Hawke basically invited his friends to read different parts from this transcript to put this thing together.
Well,
so
it's cool.
It's amazing. And of course, I knew about Paul Newman, but I didn't know much about Joanne Woodward. And I think this movie does a great job, or this documentary does a great job of exploring her and their relationship. So in this movie, sometime later, one of the episodes, the two of them on the 25th wedding anniversary renewed their vows. And I'm just going to read these vows because I think this is why this movie's on my list. The vows go like this. Happiness in marriage is not something that just happens. A good marriage must be created. It is standing together, facing the world. It is not looking for perfection in each other. It is cultivating flexibility, patience, and understanding. Doing things for each other, not in the attitude of duty or sacrifice, but in the spirit of joy. It is having the capacity to forgive and forget. It is finding room for the things of the spirit. It is a common search for the good and the beautiful. It is not only marrying the right partner, it is being the right partner. So,
well, great words.
I know.
Yeah.
When I listen to this, and I've actually screenshotted this thing on my phone, and it resonates with me a lot. And I think this year was a year with me when me and my partner we finally are in the same time zone, in the same place. And we've kind of gone in the next step of our relationship and our journey. I think this movie, their relationship, which obviously is way more complex and complicated and fraught, and it was not an easy relationship. I don't share any of that in my own relationship, but I think these words really resonated with me. So I really wanted to pick one movie that sort of represents them. And I watched a bunch of movies that are shown in this documentary that star the two of them. And I think this one sort of rose to the top for me because it represents the heat and the friction and the messiness and how different these two people are, but also how they find each other and actually how similar they are in their stubbornness and in their attitudes and how they treat the world and what have you. And I think it's such a beautiful exploration of these two people. Obviously brilliant performances by both of them. And Joanne Woodward is really a find for me, like I have never watched anything of hers before. And now I watched a fair bit, still more that I need to watch, but she's just incredible. She's sort of, of Brando's ilk. Like she comes from that school of acting, method acting and such. She's one of those pioneering people of those different schools of acting. So you really see that in this movie. Of course, the supporting cast is amazing. Like I mentioned, Orson Welles, that is Hammy Best. Angela Lansbury was another big person for me and Robert this year. Like our comfort food show this whole year was Murder, She Wrote. So I wanted to make sure we put something of hers because we sadly lost her.
We did, yes.
A legend, an icon. So I don't know, this movie sort of just felt very poignant in so many different ways, and on its own it's a beautifully done movie as well, of just a character study of these two people. The specific time that they are set up in is beautifully shot, but I think for me the big takeaway is really just relationships, how they work, the messiness that they bring, and what you have to do on your own to put in the work to make them work. So that's sort of what this movie and these two people stand for. So yeah, that's my number two.
Yeah, I've not heard of that Ethan Hawke documentary. Similar to you, I know Paul Newman's career much better than Joanne Woodward's. I'd seen a couple of her films, but obviously, or not, I shouldn't say obviously, but I'm a much more versed and more of a fan of Newman than her. I knew they were, one of the perennial power couples and long-standing romances in Hollywood, so I knew of their relationship. But I definitely will check out that Ethan Hawke documentary just to learn more about them. I mean, that the vow renewal, whoever wrote that, whether it was one of them
or them themselves.
Oh, they did, and not a screenwriter friend, because that thing was so well written. Is definitely a testament to how I've viewed their relationship in terms of Hollywood, right? Like, few relationships in Hollywood last a very long time, and they were definitely one of the gold standards for that. And I guess still are, because Newman passed away already, so they can, the relationship's not going to change. So it was interesting coming to this film, because I'd not seen this one before. I'd heard about it, never seen it, and I thought it was okay. I wasn't really actually taken with much of it, other than Orson Welles. I thought was just amazing. I mean, just stole every scene. I was just enthralled with what he was doing. This is in his period where all he wanted to play was sort of like grotesque figures. Like, he always sort of overweight and big personalities, and also physically and personality wise. So it was interesting to see just another performance. I actually had no idea he was in this movie. I always heard of it as like, oh, it's one of the Newman Woodward films that is really well known and famous. When I saw his name in the credits, I was like, whoa, Orson Welles, like, is he really in this movie a lot? And he actually was.
Oh yeah.
He definitely disappeared in the role, and I was waiting for him to come on in every scene. Newman was fine, and I actually sort of going again difference from with the theme that I also always associated with their relationship, and that you were picking on too. I didn't really think they had that much great chemistry, honestly, in the film. I don't know. I just was not buying it. Or it wasn't something where it's immediately lighting the the screen on fire like some on-screen couples have. And I don't know if I've seen a movie. I must have seen a movie with them in it before. I just don't really recall off the top of my head. But yeah, it was kind of slow, and I don't know. I wasn't really that taken in it. But Orson Welles was the highlight for me. Great performance.
I feel like if I had not watched the documentary, I would probably react maybe similarly to that, although I still think that there is just a lot of power in this movie between them and the quiet performances and the explosions that are happening around them, sometimes literally.
Right.
But it is definitely, it's a melodrama of that time. So there's definitely that kind of slowness to it and such. But I think it's interesting you said that about Paul Newman and the chemistry. And the document explores this, is that when their career started, she was way ahead of him. She was
a bigger star,
bona fide actress, and got her Oscar pretty early. And in fact, Paul Newman in this documentary, in his own words, sort of says that he struggled to really sort of inhabit and be. And to me, I think it's not until Paul Newman's latter career movies are actually way more powerful to me, because he's finally come into his own. And I think you see that here. I think the lack of chemistry is actually him sort of still figuring it out, versus she is sort of effortless. She's really being and inhabiting. But there is a meta-ness to that too, because I think his character is also sort of like that. He's sort of an outsider, and is very internal and traumatized in many ways and problematic in many ways. So I think there's some of that's at play as well. So I just think there's just so many meta layers to this. And watching the documentary just made this movie richer.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and I agree with you too about Newman's career. I definitely associate him more with 70s, 80s films that he was in. And those were just great performances that he's had. And then I guess I was expecting this one to be of that level, or at least his star power wattage to be something where like, whoa, this is going to be the next guy who's going to write. And again, for me, just Orson Welles overpowered this entire film for me.
Yeah.
And he was the one I was like, I just wanted to watch in every scene. So I definitely will watch this documentary because it sounds amazing. And it seems like I should also rewatch this afterwards and see if I can pick up more on a lot of the metatextual context that between the two of them and their stage of their careers, because I don't know a lot about that. And I think just the film didn't show that to me, but I definitely will check out this documentary. You said it was on HBO Max. Okay, I'll have to look for this. It sounds great. I love Hollywood documentaries. Documentaries about,
I'm surprised you hadn't heard of it because it was such a big splashy thing. It was everywhere, and
okay, I don't go on HBO Max. One of my favorite
watches of the year.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, I gotta check that out. Yeah, just tough things. You just get buried so quickly in the the deluge of streaming content. But I don't know how this slipped through my fingers. But after we record, I'll go on HBO Max and throw it on my list and definitely check this out. It sounds we're not being sponsored by HBO Max. I just will say that. But though if they're listening, I'm just kidding. I'll definitely check it out. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.